took me a long time to start the company. Probably I'd been thinking about it for maybe a decade. But my kids were extremely young. I remember standing in line at a fast food restaurant, and I remember thinking, like, if I don't do something, I'm going to look back on my life and think I really didn't address what was in my heart. My journey toward what I'm doing today has so much to do with both of my parents as well as Sidwell. My parents met when my father was at Haverford, my mother was at Bryn Mawr. So it was a natural thing to send their children to Sidwell. But my father, who grew up in the country, always wanted to be out in nature. So we spent a lot of weekends and summer outside the city in various farms we had in our family. Being in a very urban area, and then being in Appalachia, I think did a lot to shape my view of the world. I met the food system very early in my life. And I started asking myself, what's the difference between that pig and my dog? And I couldn't come up with underlying justifications that weren't superficial. One of the things that Sidwell really drove home was there's an opportunity to make a difference in the world. And the Quaker phrase, let your life speak, was one that I think my classmates and I took very seriously. And when I was in graduate school, I remember being in my father's office and I was wondering about what I should be doing as a career. And he said, what's the biggest problem in the world? And I said, well, if the climate becomes destabilized, everything else is going to be impacted. So I got into that as a discipline, and I worked for an amazing company that makes fuel cells. And I started to think we're trying to solve this through an energy solution. And I realized livestock exceeds transportation in terms of emissions. And that spoke to me in a way where I felt that I could impact human health, natural resource use, climate, and then importantly for me, animal welfare, by focusing on that particular part of our economy. I think at this stage, with what's happening with climate, there's so much urgency that we can't wait for government to fix it. We have to have a one-to-one relationship with the consumer to get this done. And there's an opportunity 3 times a day to make a choice, to heal our bodies and heal the earth at the same time. And that's what this business is about. I didn't want to create a veggie burger. I wanted to see if I could understand meat and try to recreate that from plants. Meat is really not that complicated. It's amino acids, lipids, trace minerals, vitamins, predominantly water. And where does the animal get all that? They get it from plants. So why don't we just get it directly from the plant and not run it all through the animal? Then it became, can I get the scientists that can understand that? I can remember I had protein sitting in the port of Baltimore. I couldn't get it out, and they were fining me every day for it. And so the humbling experience of calling a family member and saying, I need 40 grand, and I need it like in 2 days, those things you just find yourself doing. When I'm asked, why did you take these levels of risk? My classmates would particularly appreciate that I'm referencing this Springsteen quote. I can't tell the difference between my courage and desperation. And if you put yourself in situations where you just have to succeed, you'd be amazed at what you do. One thing I think my wife and I think about, because many of our staff have young children, how do you put your kids on a path to being able to reduce the risk of heart disease, of cancer, of diabetes? And some of the things they look at are reducing red meat consumption, reducing processed meat consumption. And if we can help our kids have those habits early, we can really make a difference in the latter part of their life. To know that we're helping families stay together longer is very motivating. In this most recent iteration, Beyond 4, we worked for years with leading dietitians, doctors, nutritionists to make sure that the products we're creating not only satisfy from a taste perspective, but also deliver benefits to the human body in terms of health. We've gone through so many changes as a company. One thing that has stayed constant is my family and their level of support. Sometimes the harder things are, the more you realize how important that support is, and I've certainly realized that. One of the things that I've tried to make available to my kids is the idea that the way the world isn't necessarily how it needs to be. My hope and prayer for Beyond Meat is that we help more of life today than we did yesterday, and that tomorrow we help more than we did today. Just through changing the protein at the center of the plate and potentially reducing the levels of methane, freeing up land to rewild and take carbon out of the air. Even if we do that just in the smallest way, that seems worth doing.